So, welcome to the Role-Playing History YouTube channel. I'm Wayne Davis. Listen, usually on the podcast, we look into the history of role-playing games, we look at their creators, we look at the games themselves, and just like anything else that seems to fit into that category of role-playing games in history. Here on the YouTube channel, I like to do things just a little bit differently, and with that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about some actual gaming stuff itself today. Now, I have to give credit for this video to Matt Colville because I was watching, not his most recent video, it dropped yesterday, but the video he dropped the week before. And in it, he was talking about like the rules of a role-playing game. And that we need to remember that while there are rules, we don't have to be so beholden to those rules that it slows down the process of having fun. So, what does that mean? Well, let me use an example from my own game to see if we can make this work out. Now, I do have to concede that the majority of my group has been role-playing for at least 2 decades, if not longer. 5th edition D&D is still a little bit new to most of us. And we just recently added another player to our group who hasn't been playing for all that long. I mean, for a little bit, but not nowhere nearly as long as the rest of us. Anyway, what am I trying to say? Rules slow the game down. They do. I mean, obviously we need rules because a game without rules is chaos. You don't believe me? All right, go when you're done watching this, go look back through YouTube at some of the early, if you can find the early footage of UFC. Yeah, back when it was there were no weight classes and is everybody on everybody, and there were state governing bodies that wouldn't sanction it because they basically called it a human cockfight. Yeah. Now, I'm not trying to compare a D&D game to a cockfight, but what I'm trying to say is we need some rules. And what Matt was saying in his video, and I'm kind of trying in my own way to say here, is that we need to feel free to make a decision in the here and now, knowing that it could possibly be wrong so that we can keep the game moving forward. In my game, we get slowed down frequently because our spellcasters are trying to figure out, whether or not the spells do what they want them to do. I think the primary problem to this is that, again, we've been playing for 6 editions, so we remember 6 editions worth of spells, and, AD&D did one thing, and 3rd edition did something else, and 4th, you kind of get the point. So somewhere in all of that, we just can't remember what the hell this spell does in the current edition of the game. Now, one could argue that your spellcasting players need to be checking that shit out when it's not their turn. That way it should be ready to go when it is their turn. And I do agree with that, and that's what my spellcasters are frequently trying to do. But I can counter that argument by saying that frequently other decisions that are made during a combat round can change what the spellcaster is going to do. Okay, so our party wizard, he loves him some fireballs. I mean, loves him some fireballs. But if the party's melee fighters are up in the mix, a fireball will earn him the enmity of and a probable ass-kicking from either those characters or their players. So he finds himself frequently needing to adjust his thoughts on the fly. And look, my party wizard is not a gaming idiot. Believe me, he is not. But I'll go back to my previous point. 6 editions worth of spells. All right, anyway, so how do we pitch the rules out the window and speed all of this up? Well, if you find yourself in this spot, so long as the rest of the table says they're okay with it, rule that the spell does what the player thinks it does. For the remainder of the session, it does that for everybody. Whether it's the good guys or the bad guys, we're being equitable here. Now, after the session, go check it. If you find out that that's not how the spell works, then just make sure the entire group is aware of that at the start of the next session. Make a note of it someplace so that you remember it and so that your spellcaster remembers it, and start using that spell the way it was written. Or don't. Use it the way you ruled on it. I mean, if you like the way you did that spell on the fly and you like the way it worked, you're under no obligation to do it the quote-unquote right way. At that point, your way is the right way. I think I've hinted at this a few times, but I'm going to say it one more time for the kids at the back of the bleachers. The rules you run for your game or for your table are the right rules. Yes, the creators of your game had a certain thought in mind when they wrote certain things. And yes, the playtesters agreed with that vision. But, and I cannot stress this enough, Playing role-playing games is first and foremost about having fun, period. No qualifiers needed. So if you wind up adjusting a few rules along the way, so long as your group is in agreement with it, and so long as those rules apply equally, who gives a shit? Seriously. Yes, I understand. There are a few of you out there who consider yourself purists, who are pretty much having a conniption about this. First off, let me tell you something. You're not a purist. You're a gatekeeper, and I fucking hate gatekeepers. Second off, my game, my group, our tables, our fun, and piss off if you don't like it. Okay? All right, I'm pretty sure I put that a little bit stronger than Matt did, and I know I was a little more profane than he was, but whatever. I think you get the point. I just think we spend too much time worried about getting things perfectly correct and a hell of a lot less time actually having fun. Here, let me give you another example from my game, and it's not so much rules, but just follow me. So at the very beginning of my most recent campaign, I had what I had intended to be the big bad evil guy, intended to be the big bad evil guy for the duration of the campaign, absolutely wreck the player's shit. Since then, they've been working to try to figure out who he is for sure, where he is, and how they're going to get powerful enough to take him on, survive, and take him out. Now, the party wizard had missed the last 2 sessions, which for our group's a pretty big deal, since he is also a game master and he runs a game opposite my game, and we only play 2 sessions a month. So that means he's been out for 2 months participating in this adventure, which also means when he showed up this past Saturday night, he was pretty far behind in knowing and understanding what had been accomplished. So it took a little bit of time, and the group got him up to speed, and I got him a little more up to speed. And I noticed after we got him up to speed, he was looking up a few extra things. It was a little more time than he would normally spend. It didn't interfere with the flow of play or anything, but it was obvious he had something on his mind. And towards the end of the session, after the group had done a few other things, he asked to pull me aside because he wanted to talk to me about something. And in my group, hey, listen, I pull players aside all the time to tell them shit I don't want everybody else to know. He wanted to pull me aside because he didn't want the rest of the group to know what he was thinking. And he said to me, I know this isn't going to end the game, but to my character, this is the end game. My character believes this ends everything we're doing. And he showed me a piece of paper. On that piece of paper, he'd written down 2 wishes that he wanted to do. Now, I'm going to be straight up with you. The gaming community has as many theories about using wishes as games as there have been wishes used in games. In this instance, the wizard had acquired a ring of 3 wishes earlier in the campaign, and he was willing to burn 2 of the stones. They come with 3. He was willing to burn 2 of the stones to do something that he believed needed to be done for his group, really, for their sanity, to keep things from ripping apart. And I read over the wishes. And look, I probably could have found a way to mess with him. I chose not to. I allowed him to have the Lich's phylacteries appear in a bag he was holding. I then allowed the Lich to appear in a circle he'd chalked out in front of him, nude and defenseless. I then allowed the entire party to have a surprise round. And they destroyed that Lich in 1 round of combat. They barely did it, but they did it. And then they destroyed the phylacteries. And that ended the big bad evil guy. Now look, I mentioned it. There are at least a dozen different ways I could have chosen to mess with the way this all went down. I could have chosen to be a complete asshat and used gamer legalese to get my way out of it. I could have given my wizard the spirit of the wishes he wanted without giving him the actual result. I decided not to do any of those things. And I'm going to tell you why. It was freaking epic, okay? To see the looks on the faces of the group members when he told them what he had in mind, that was priceless. And I mean, they really all seemed to get off on feeling like, holy shit, we kind of got one over on him. Right on. Yeah, this is going to work. Is this going to work? This is going to work. Of course it worked. And to me, that's perfect because that's a good night's entertainment. And we had an issue earlier in the evening, and frankly, I was responsible for that issue, at least in part because we wound up, you talk about a sandbox game or a game going off the rails. Yeah, I was winging everything at that point, and something that I had done, a decision that I had made while winging it, started a whole lot of shit, and we wound up having to back up and do some other things. Anyway, Because of all of that, I was really looking for a really good up way to end the session. That turned out to be it. Now, let me give you a peek behind the screen to show you, if I can be really, really profane for a second, just how fucked I am right now. I didn't have a bigger, badder guy lined up for the group to chase down. The guy they took out was literally my campaign's main bad dude. I mean, take a look. Here's the thought. Okay, it was going to take a lot of sessions for these guys to be able to level up to, really to chase after this guy's lieutenants. And I had it where this lich had like 12 phylacteries. Don't at me on the rules about that, okay? I wanted these guys chasing their tails for a long enough period of time that they could level up. I mean, they were level 8 when this went down. This should not happen. I probably shouldn't have let it happen, but fuck it, I did, okay? Literally, they were supposed to take at least another, 6 or 8 levels. So yeah, I screwed myself on that. But my group had a good time. And you know what? I will figure out where the next big bad guy comes from. That's on me. Fortunately, I do have some story threads that I haven't managed to tie up yet. So I'll just take a couple of them and I'll use those to knit us up a new big bad evil guy that hopefully this time will run us the duration of the campaign. And if it doesn't take a long time, you know what? Then fuck it. We wrap the D&D game and I start playing Deadlands. Whatever. And when I come up with some more D&D shit, we'll go back to it. So I got a game to run in 3 weeks. I got to make sure my group's having a good time. I will come up with something. And at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about. Having a good time. So that's the video. I want you to feel free to drop the comments down below. I've also got all the ways that you can contact me down there in the old info box. So if you're curious, give that a peep. As always, make sure you click on the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get your notices when we drop new stuff here. And if I can, I'm going to plug for you to check out the podcast wherever you get the podcast. Obviously, you do get them here, but you get them a week later here than they drop live wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so enough bullshit for now. I'm Wayne Davis, and your role-playing history.